Welcome to the Parish the Thought Show. The opinions of Brian, your host, and his guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Now, here's Brian.
Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the show. We have a special in-house guests today. We have the author of the book, Dictates of Conscience, From Mormon High Priest to My New Life as a Woman, Laurie Lee Hall with us. Welcome, welcome.
Good evening.
And a mother of a transgender son.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome everyone. This is an interesting dynamic to have you all in the same room, because originally it was just going to be you, Laurie. Do I Laurie Lee or Laurie?
Either's fine, but
Okay.
I'll answer to Laurie Lee.
Okay. And my other friends, I figured this was a perfect opportunity to learn from each other about your experiences, because you're how old? You're 15?
Yeah.
15. Okay. And Laurie Lee, how old are you? May I still, at what age are you no longer offended that you get asked?
I just turned 64 last week.
64. You don't look a day over 63 and a half.
There you go.
So, well, welcome both of you, all of you here. I appreciate it. This is going to be a fun, awkward for me, because I'm learning so much about your two worlds. Laurie Lee, let's start with you.
Sure.
Tell me about let's maybe do a little brief about your book. We don't want to give it all away because we want people to read it, and it's a phenomenal story. And so give us a little insight to that, and then if you guys have any questions or comments along the way, and let's just go from there. How about that?
Right. So, Dictates of Conscience, From Mormon High Priest to My New Life as a Woman, came out November of last year, 2024, published by Signature Books. And I had just a fabulous experience working with Signature, and particularly the director, Barbara Jones Brown, who was my editor for this book. It's I'm a first-time author, never considered myself a writer. And with Barbara's help, we were able to take my story in all of its messiness and turn it into just a very powerful narrative. I always felt that, given my journey and experiences as both a church leader and as a bishop and stake president formally, as well as a fairly prominent employee of the church, the architect over the temples and special projects of the church for a number of years, working closely with the senior brethren, and coming out in 2012 as a transgender woman and continuing to work for the church for another 4 years, that all of that created quite an interesting tale to tell, one that has some interesting intersectionality between my journey regarding gender identity and the church's journey regarding how to manage or control their transgender members. And then ultimately, I lost my employment and my membership in the church over the course of about a 9-month period because of who I am. And I used to say that it was the audacity of living authentically that ended my relationship directly with the church. All of that lands in this memoir, and my journey since then of discovering myself and walking, this new path as an authentic person for the first time in my long life. I'm very happy that Dictates of Conscience came out when it did, just as the current political climate became even more destructive and hurtful towards transgender people. because I really truly believe that the power of stories, and the more stories that can be told, help to instruct and overcome misunderstanding, fear, and in some cases ignorance regarding who we are, and if anything can combat the current tsunami, if you will, of both political and religious backlash against transgender lives, it's going to be the telling of authentic stories. And in each case, as I state in the preface and again in the afterword of the book, to know that gender identity is real and it's not to be conflated with biological sex assigned at birth. And the best way to know an individual's gender identity is simply to ask them and believe them. And that idea permeates my memoir. And I invite anyone who has an interest in any aspect of my story to pick it up and read it and have an open heart, because I think it will change hearts and it will save lives.
And not to minimize your story, but it's information for someone that's, how you're threatened by that is beyond me. And that's one of the saddest parts about your story, is how the brethren, all these people who loved and supported you and loved your work and you, and all of a sudden you were somehow tainted and
a threat.
But you're the same. My guess is your general character is exactly the same,
if not a little softer, kinder, and better.
And that blows me away, because that's so contrary to the gospel.
Yeah.
About loving your neighbor, and you're their neighbor, and you are the same human. You're the same kind, good human that's done all those wonderful things that everyone praises, and everyone goes into the temples and praises, and now all of a sudden you can't or won't or aren't.
Right. My promise to the leadership of our department in the church office building was, and it came from my knowledge of what I knew about how things were changing for me as I was beginning my transition while I was still a church employee, was that the best is yet to come. You know, the most creative and not distracted person that I could possibly be was yet to come as I made this transition socially and medically and legally to become who I am. I said, you know, you like the work I've done before, but I was struggling and did all of that. Imagine how it could be if I wasn't struggling anymore. How great it would be to be able to create these things that y'all need.
So the temples could have been
more
phenomenal
if that's possible.
Whoever's in charge up there in Salt Lake, you screwed the pooch, maybe. I don't know. Can I say that? I can.
It's your show.
It's my show. I can say that. So you guys maybe missed out on some pretty amazing miracles, but yeah. Transgender mom and anonymous transgender son.
Hello. Cisgender mom.
Excuse me. Thank you. Tell me.
Trans son.
Can you tell us your story, a little bit about your story, and then we'll try to see where we can merge these two stories.
Yeah, so we knew early on that our child was transgender. He came out to us when he was 9, and like most parents who aren't very familiar with the community, took us a tiny bit by surprise, but we had to definitely fight against our biases of feeling like he was too young to know, he needs to wait till he goes through puberty, all the things. And so for the first year after he came out, we spent a lot of time reading, and honestly, probably it was a little bit of denial, maybe just giving it more time to see if those thoughts and feelings were present again, which they very much were. And so from that point on, we just immersed ourselves in education, reaching out to parents of other transgender kids, therapists, medical providers, basically anybody that had any expertise or experience. We would talk to them, interview them, ask them. Fortunately, a lot of the parents, the transgender kids would also speak with us. Most of them were into adulthood. So that was a little bit more of a challenge in our situation because most of the people that we did meet and come in contact with were already young adults. And so there was a moment, well, a couple years, that we kind of felt alone because we didn't know anybody that had an actual child. So yeah, we kind of spent the next few years reading and researching and finding specialists. And as time went on, it was just a lot more evident that he was transgender. And so we started putting supports in place, and he made the decision to come out socially, and we supported him in that. And we're just kind of in the middle of that now.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, like, when I did come out, like, at school and everything, it was hard because, like, at one point, I'm like, I just want to be who I am and, like, identify who, like, how I am. And, like, a lot of people, like, didn't support that. So it was a struggle for a couple years. And then last year, I got moved to a new school, and I was just like, maybe just like chill and like, yeah, I didn't really tell anybody, but I feel like it's been a better experience because, like, yeah,
People just treat
people
Well,
just treat
let me
me
ask
like
you,
me.
if I can just go deep with some details,
Yeah.
so people can know when you say you came out. Well, let me back up. When did you know that, for lack of a better term, you were different than other kids?
I feel like a lot of, like, when I was a kid, like, just like how I was always very, like, before the whole transitioning, I was very, like, tomboyish. I would play with normally, like, what people would assume with boy toys, and, like, Ninja Turtles, the whole thing. And I, like, didn't realize it when I was younger, but I could definitely tell that, like, something was up.
So way before 9 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you came out, who did you tell? Or how when you came, what did that look like?
I mean, I started out with my just immediate family because, and then as that progressed, I told my, like, I told my grandma, my grandpa, and my dad's side and my mom's side, and then eventually to school and my friends, just everybody.
And you said some accepted you, some didn't.
Yeah.
So what did that look like, though? The ones that maybe didn't accept you, so someone could recognize that, or so they can maybe protect themselves. Tell me what that looks like if you can.
I mean, when people didn't know that I was trans, they were like very like, oh yeah, we'll treat you like a normal person because,
You're the same.
and then
You're the same person.
yeah, and then I would come out, and then people would be like, oh, they would like treat me differently, maybe not talk to me, and it just felt like I was a different person even though I wasn't. I just came out as trans.
Do you remember the day you came out?
Yeah. I found out I had the vocabulary to know that I was trans when I went to a concert with my family. It was Love Loud. That was really cool. But I was like, they were talking about trans people, and I'm like, that kind of sounds like me.
So not having a language must be, well, in Laurie Lee, yeah, because this is a different era for you, and zero language, I would assume, about the what. Yeah, you couldn't tell anybody,
right? I had no way to explain it. There were no words that I was familiar with when I was his age. I first read about the word transgender in its current term usage and so forth, and at the time, gender identity disorder is what it was called, when I was in my late 40s. So I had gone through nearly 50 years of my life not knowing what I was feeling, why I felt that way, and that I really wasn't the only person on earth that was that weird. What a difference it makes when you can put that into language and then hear and talk to others who experience the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pipe in here. I think what's really great too is once there is the vocabulary for it, it was awesome that it just put all of the puzzle pieces together. Like, we noticed from probably 4 years old, never really wanted to wear girly things. I, put him in dance and would do makeup and like all the things that a mom thinks you do for a daughter. And when he was in 2nd grade, he had to draw a self-portrait of himself, and he came home and showed us, and it was a boy. And at first we were like, oh, he just has imagination. We didn't really comment one way or the other, but then it was like once he had the vocabulary and he could explain how he felt, looking back, we were like, oh my goodness, all of these things that we just thought were just him or a little peculiar or whatever, it was finally like, oh, that's the missing piece that we just didn't know, because I feel like we did a pretty good job of not always putting stereotypical gender constraints on him. Like, he would have Ninja Turtle birthday parties and people would get a little upset or question why we would allow him to play with boy toys or have boy-themed birthdays or whatever. And we always just said, hey, it's whatever kids like is what we're going to have for him. And then it's like, as time has gone on, it's like, oh, if I would have just known earlier, it makes sense.
Funny enough, I'm going to make a plug for my wife's career. She's an art therapist. And what you just described is classic art therapy. You didn't have the words, but you could draw. And she has pulled out stories from so many kids who can't articulate what is going on in their mind, but they can draw it.
Right.
And that's what you did.
That's really powerful.
Boom. So there's your career.
There's a plug for art therapy.
Plug for art therapy. But it's that's,
the thing that you just said, if we had only known, when I came out to my parents, they were in their late 70s, and my mom sitting next to me on the couch, she said, if I could have only known. That's across generations.
Right.
That moms feel that way.
Right. Especially because, I don't know, I definitely think the younger generation, we embrace authenticity far better than the older generations do. And I think it's a deep human desire and need to present ourselves authentically to other people, whether that's in personality or our beliefs or how we dress. And I'll probably get emotional.
oh my goodness, how dare you? This is a show about real people and real stories, so please embrace that.
I just think as a mother, you just want your kids to be happy and you want them to live a fulfilled life. And I would never want my child to be anything different than how he was born. And so I feel very fortunate, even though there are a lot of challenges navigating this road with him being younger. But I'm so very grateful that I did get to know, because I think about your mom, and I'm like, there has to be a part of her soul that just kind of seeks a little bit, that it's like, I mean, I knew at 9 years old for him, and even then it was like, oh, if I could have just known sooner, could I have supported him better or given him different opportunities? And so I think it's just so important that whether you're transgender or cisgender, it's like embracing who you are and being willing to show that to the world, because I think that's what we all crave and want out of this life. So,
And of course, you could have done better. Your mom could have done better had they known, but we didn't
Right.
You didn't
You
know.
do the
You
best
do the
that you
best you
can
can with
with
what
the
you
knowledge you
have.
have. Yep,
We
100%.
all, well, yeah, I screwed my kids up pretty hard there, but I didn't know. And I look at my parents, and I'm no longer angry at my dad for the issues he struggles with, and he doesn't even
100%.
realize it.
And I think it's these learning moments that give you grace for the generations before, that you just have this moment of awareness that you realize in yourself that you're doing the best that you can with the knowledge that you have, with all of the information that's available, and you're trying to do right by your kids. And that's what our parents were trying to do for us, and knowing that we're all going to come up short, and hoping that we have love and grace for one another to walk those journeys together.
Brian, I have a thought. Where we've got someone who has had this opportunity to have family support, which is so incredibly important as a child on up through his teenage years, in contrast to the experiences that I describe in Dictates of Conscience when I was the same age that he is, about identifying when I was 5 years old that something was wrong, that when I was 7, my mom gave me my name had I been born a girl, which is about the most identifying thing that I had at the time. Didn't have the language to explain why I felt that way, but I knew that was my name as a 7-year-old. But then as I start to think about this young man at 15 years old, and where was I at 15 years old, and to be able to contrast the fact that he knows who he is and he can have that self-expression and be accepted in his classrooms and in his amongst his peers, and how hard it was for me to hide that. And I note in the memoir that as a child, I wanted everybody to see who I really was. But very quickly, by the time, like upper grades started to hit, middle school and so forth, it was like, no, I have to hide who I am because that's not safe. And in some ways, conditions even today make it unsafe to be able to really be who you are. There are some places in the country where it's a little safer than others. I'm not so sure that where we're sitting right now is as safe as it ought to be. I don't think it is.
No,
I don't think so either.
The irony of it all, that where we are, that you don't feel that way, is sad. And maybe I have a tendency to throw conservative Christians under the bus fast, and maybe I shouldn't do that, because what I'm finding out recently is that more people, I think, are more open and more kind than I'm giving them credit for. Just because my journeys that I'm on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I know there's always the ones that you want to smack them. But I think generally speaking,
their voices tend to be the loudest, and I
loudest.
think sometimes I personally fall into black and white thinking that those loud voices are the majority, when I just don't think that they are. I think that most people are trying to be kind and understanding and accepting. You're always going to have jerks everywhere that don't want to understand, and they don't want to have empathy. But I think that's why these conversations are so important, because sometimes people just don't know where to even begin trying to understand or to have empathy, or how to even show support.
Well, I mean, like with some of them too, it's like they've never they might have like a trans person in their life, but like to actually know them, it's like really different, because like once you get to know them and like know their story and what they've been through, it's like really, it changes a lot of things.
You put the human in it, and I think we're afraid of things, and we fear what we're afraid of. And so we have a natural tendency to like, whoa, that's not for me. Get away from me. That's, that's going to infect me.
That's why the sharing of stories and allowing people to get to know us personally is so very, very important. To me, the most critical challenge facing the trans community is the anti-transgender legislation, the bans that are placed upon young people and preventing them from being able to receive the readily available and scientifically proven gender-affirming health care, which is not all the scary stuff that politicians and some conservative religions suggest that it is. It's about giving a young man like this the opportunity to explore who he really is. Again, you listen to what the individual is saying about who they are. So from my perspective, the real contrast we have sitting here tonight is an individual for whom at that age none of that existed, and an individual who at his age currently has those available supports and care legislated away to prevent him from being able to benefit from it. And it pains me as it gets taken away state by state from young people like this, that they will have to suffer through their teen years like I suffered.
A couple of years ago, I used to hear people say, well, that's child abuse, allowing that kind of quote unquote care. Is that narrative out there because someone has exaggerated what the care really is? Because I know I had a discussion about Roe v. Wade when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And my whole life I was like, I think abortion's horrible. I don't like it. And I knew very little about it. But I had this mentality of, oh, the people that want them are just whoring around. And that was the narrative. It was in my brain. And I had a discussion with my very liberal cousin about it. And we learned a lot from each other. And what we came to agree on was that both sides have a horrible marketing program. They're not telling the story like it actually is. It's a lot more complicated. And I think it's obviously the same with the people that are afraid it's child abuse. And then it's child abuse to allow your kid to decide their gender when they can't even decide what their favorite color is. Things like that.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe speak to that.
I mean, it's complicated because in my profession, informed consent is paramount. And so I had to work through my own biases of what is consent? Is he old enough to consent? And honestly, at the end of the day, especially with politics, when I listen into the discussions that our legislators are having, most don't care to ask parents of trans kid what our experiences are like, what we're facing, and they don't realize that gender affirming care is mental health care. And I think that they have a narrative that they believe, and they will find the people that give them the stories that confirms that. And there are people who detransition. I mean, plain and simple. There are going to be people that make decisions and they later regret it. But I think that it's not fair to take the people that happens to and project that's every trans person's experience, because at the end of the day, when we were deciding as parents what we were going to consider or not consider with our medical professionals, that weighed heavily upon us, because that was the worst case scenario, that we could provide gender affirming care to our child and that he could detransition later and hate our guts and think that we are the world's most awful parents who are child abusers. And obviously my experience is different because I feel like we're advocating for our child to be able to be himself. And when we started affirming care as far as like haircuts and clothing, it's like you became more yourself, and seeing that light come and seeing things fall into place and seeing that happiness. If I have to pick at the end of the day, if he's in his 20s or 30s, do I want a child coming to me saying, you knew when I was 9 years old how I felt and who I was, and you did absolutely nothing to help me, and you forced things to happen to me that you could have prevented or sought care to make things be different for me, or the opposite, that it's like, wow, thanks, mom and dad. Like, you believed me, you knew who I was, and you supported me in that. And we had that conversation a lot with him where, when we decided to make certain decisions, that it's like, hey, you got to know the good, bad, and the ugly of going into this. And technically you can't legally consent. I mean, he can consent, but people's argument of they're not 18. And it's like, well, I'm going to err on the side of believing you. I'm going to err on the side of this is who you are. And if I have resources available to help you and this is what you need, I'm going to do it. And honestly, people are going to believe whatever they want about us. Either we're not supportive enough, or we're child abusers, or it's whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm like, the only people that have to live our lives are us and him. And so what are we doing? We're taking all of the available resources and information that we have in evidence-based practices, and we're applying those in our life. If we get it right, which I think we are, it's great. And if it isn't, like, we all know going into it that we're figuring this out, because it's hard looking and seeing that there's not a lot of old trans people, because they either couldn't come out or mental health issues, and they didn't ever get to age to be that old, And so it's just a very tender thing that when people can live authentically, it's like you're helping pave the path for younger generations, and people like him are going to be helping people as well, because there's many more people coming after him. And I
think it would be really beneficial if both of you, and particularly if you could describe what steps you'd have taken, and then kind of in what order and how long it took to do those things. And just if you're okay with explaining what you have done and what you haven't done yet, and what just isn't available to you, or, that the audience understand what this journey really looks like from someone in your shoes.
Yeah. And then same for you.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be just the contrast of just like you. Well, yeah, you're the age. You could be. I could be your grandpa, and I know you could too.
Right. I'm 50
Grandma.
years down the road.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got 9 years on me, so, or no. No.
So if you would, please.
Yeah, so in the beginning of it, I mean, just kind of like started out slower. We were like figuring things out, and like, just like, yeah, just like, I don't know, haircuts. Yeah, so I think we started with, I think it was in 5th grade. It was online school, and that was when it kind of just all started. I was like, yeah, my name, I wanted to go by a different name than the one that I was given to at birth. And yeah, it was nice because like people have called me that name before. I like started going by it because it was a nickname. But yeah, and then just haircuts. They were more like what I was feeling. And then we started talking about like around 21.
Yeah, was around
21 we started talking about,
Meaning 2021.
yes.
Yeah.
We started talking about blockers and other things because like I was going through puberty. I didn't like the changes, and just,
You hadn't gone through puberty yet, though.
I didn't have any periods, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We were approaching that time, and so
So when you say blockers, you're talking about puberty blockers.
Yes,
Yeah.
that blocks all the changes that are like,
that-
like periods, all that stuff.
And what does that feel like?
I mean, it
Is
was,
is it horrible? Is it
no,
is this because it's something the result is something that you want,
yeah,
but it's not like, doesn't like mess up your hormones and turn you into a zombie or
no,
okay.
So, quick note about puberty blockers. So, those were such a huge blessing to us because we did want more time to figure things out. And that is what gave us time. So when he was approaching the age of puberty, that's when we consulted with our medical team and we decided it was best for us to go on those for a couple years to see, like, as he aged, if maybe his thoughts and feelings changed. It just kind of put a pause on things to give us all a little breathing room to figure out where things were at. Because especially as parents, you do have that bias, which is really sad because it's like if your kid comes out gay, for example, your first thing is, are you old enough to feel that way? Maybe you need to wait till you're older to really know. But when a young child says they're straight, we automatically believe them. So we already kind of have some inherent biases towards cisgender and heteronormative people. But those were awesome because it basically delays puberty. It delays growth. So you do have to kind of take that into mind. You can't be on them forever. But it did give us some time to make sure through therapy and with our medical professionals that we were on the right path. And there's not a lot of side effects with them. And so that's the part where all of these anti-trans legislations with gender affirming care, they're trying to stop all of that. And it was just a huge lifeline to us. Like we needed that. Like had he had to go through puberty at that time, that would have been a devastating thing
Like
for where he
torture
was
for
at
you.
emotionally.
Yeah, and I really do want to emphasize this. Like, I feel like trans care is life changes and it saves lives because you're comfortable in your own body and you're comfortable being you, and what you feel in the inside is like projected on the outside. And I feel like it really helped me and my journey, and still with my journey, and like, yeah, it's helped a lot of people.
Wow. Amen.
Amen.
So well said. Yeah, absolutely. So any other steps that you've taken?
Oh, yeah. So, after the whole, because of course you have to be on blockers. Well, you can't be on blockers forever. So, the next step was hormone therapy and like testosterone. And yeah, I just felt ready for it. It was years of like being on blockers, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And we were like talking with doctors, all of that. And yeah.
Did you get a lot of pushback or you work, I mean, Mom, you work in the healthcare
Yeah.
field, so you probably
So I
have
think it's
connection.
kind of a important cross section that we're the few lucky ones here in our state to be able to access this. He was able to be grandfathered in before the law changed, and I was able to put some other legal protections in place before other laws changed as well. And so we feel very fortunate that we were able to have access to that, because our journey would be a lot different if we didn't have those protections. Even though we're grandfathered, it still is extremely difficult. There's only one place that offers it, and especially with the political climate, they are under a microscope. And so we've had several appointments that are pushed back or canceled, or you're in limbo. And it's really hard because what people don't realize is it's like, okay, well, when they are doing a course of treatment and they have a care plan, you can't just stop that. But yet there's not a lot of people that we have access to that this is what their expertise is. And so then you're sitting there left as a mom that it's like, well, who's going to follow up with labs? Who's going to follow up with medication levels? Are we even going to access, like, even just getting our medication from insurance and getting insurance to pay for it was like a 6-month process because of all of the legal loopholes to go through. And the amount of time that I spend on the phone with doctors' offices and insurance companies just to get help care for him, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Because you can't just talk about normal things. You have to educate and prod
Yes.
and push because people, did they just not understand, or they
Or they're
trained to just,
scared with
yeah.
everything that's happening politically. It's especially with the executive order, right? It's like,
frightened.
yeah, that's where it was like, oh my goodness, the executive order came out. We're calling the clinic, and the clinic's like, we don't know. We've got to consult with lawyers. And so you have all of these people who are in the middle of a care plan with all of this stuff going on, and everybody is afraid, especially when you see states that are now trying to pass laws to imprison doctors or even imprison parents who allow their child to have access to gender affirming care. Like, it's just becoming such a hostile environment, and people are feeling so scared about it.
Oh, you can't control people without fear.
And I mean, like, how they're saying, like, trans care, like, child abusers and stuff. I feel like it's hurting the community more to take away that, because it's like you have all these medical things that, like, your journey that you've been on, and just, like, stopping that. I mean, just stopping it in general. It's like,
That's
you can't really
abuse.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's legalizing abuse.
Yeah,
You know,
and
for
like,
someone like you.
yeah, and then like just like everything that you've like gone through, it's like I've taken so many steps to get where I'm going, just to have all that taken away. It's just like it's hard.
I also wanted to kind of point out as well that we say gender affirming care is child abuse, but people don't realize in the state of Utah, parents can consent for their daughters to have breast implants, I think as young as 16 or 17. And it's like, so we'll take a cisgender person and we will allow parents to make a decision for them or with them. And we don't consider altering a cisgender person's body child abuse. And we've normalized it with grown-ups as well, that it's like, especially in Utah, plastic surgery capital of the world, that it's like everybody's Botox, lip injection, breast implants, all of this stuff. And we almost look up to that as like this thing that we should attain.
Standards of beauty.
Yes. And especially the cross-section with the church, that it's like, it angers me that it's like, why are we taking a wonderful human who has goodness and value and talent, that before you knew who she was, you used those talents, you used the service hours, you essentially kind of exploit services from her.
And almost worship, you know, for lack of a better term, what you did, Laurie Lee.
Yes, but then once you come out to authentically say it, it's like, okay, so if you choose to medical transition, then it's like you're excommunicated. And it's like, well, you're altering the body God gave you. And it's like, but what about the women who inject their lips and get breast implants? Like, we look at that and we say, but it's helping them feel more feminine or whatever it is.
It's gender affirming care.
Yes.
Rules for thee, not for me.
Exactly. And so that's where I really just hope that the narrative changes, because if we're allowing space for cisgender people to feel more at home in their body, which is exactly what that is doing, whether it's dyeing your hair, waxing your eyebrows, getting electrolysis, whatever it is, you are affirming your gender.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Just want to feel
And you know what?
comfortable.
Yep, it will get there. And because
Say
we're
it.
having this conversation,
Yeah, you just want to
So-
feel comfortable in your
and-
own skin.
and we're like I say, it's one conversation. It's going to take a long, it's going to take a long time to right the ship, but
One of the things that prior to the current administration, one of the things that I had hope for last year was we started to see some federal justices and judges recognize that this idea of denying gender affirming care for one class of people, but allowing it legally and affirming it for another class of people is absolutely unconstitutional. It's creating a situation where there's a whole class of people that are not equal before the law with the majority.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a word about that, in the last 8 months since the election, but that line of thinking eventually is baked into our Constitution already, and we should come back around and see clear-minded politicians and other leaders recognize that you cannot, in a free democracy, put the needs of one person below the needs of other people. And that is exactly what's happening to our trans youth right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I could mention, taking this thought back to see my perspective on it, not having had gender affirming care available to me until I was in my almost 50s, I've noted in my memoir that certain things happened to me physically, not to mention what I would refer to as testosterone poisoning, but I leave space in the room for those that are now trying to get testosterone poisoning. But in my case, it was as wrong for me as estrogen doing its thing for you. And the result of 40 years as a teen and an adult of that testosterone poisoning makes me look and sound like who I am now. And I do my best with that. I'm happy I'm not looking at that old man in the mirror anymore, but that I can look at the old lady in the mirror and feel good about myself. But the physical changes that took place in my adulthood put me at greater risk for harm, for discrimination, because folks look at me and see someone who clearly is transgender and trying very hard, to be comfortable with myself in the world. But some can weaponize that against me. Whereas I rejoice and I hope for this young generation of teenagers who, good gosh, by the time you're 25, no one on this planet is going to know your story unless you share it with them.
Yeah.
You're just going to look your part. And I have a good friend who, very much like yourself, came up to his parents when he was 3 and cut off all his hair with scissors in a closet. Why did you do that? Well, Daddy, because I'm a boy. This little 3-year-old with no hair. And that person I knew first when he was your age, 15, had already started transitioning and was like yourself, changed schools and was what we refer to as stealth, kind of moving through the world as a young man, is now in his late 20s, working on a master's degree, has a girlfriend. He is, other than the fact that he's not particularly tall, he is every bit a guy and undiscernible, not discernible from his peers, cisgender peers. And I see that as such a great thing, because the time is going to come where there's this whole generation of trans folk who trans is not who they are. That's not the issue. You're a guy, you're a dude.
Yeah.
And, I try to say, I'm a woman with transgender history, and that's about as good as I can make it. But you have just such a wonderful opportunity and hope ahead of you, so long as they don't pull the plug on you.
Yeah, because I pass as a guy, and at school, I haven't told anybody that I am trans, but there might be a few suspicions, but most people are like, that's a dude. And I felt like with trans care as well, I did kind of pass, well, just looking at me, but my voice was I felt really self-conscious about it, and that's what tipped people off. But going through my journey and being on testosterone, it's really helped me, and being comfortable as me and not being as self-conscious, and just
What a relief it is, isn't it? Yeah. I noted in my story that people who knew me when I was your age have all come back to me and said, you were so sad. We never knew why. And I think, there was a reason. Because I was not me, and I knew who me needed to be.
Yes.
But I didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So again, it's so great to see this. How long have you been on testosterone, out of curiosity?
Since November, so it's
Awesome.
been like 8-ish months.
8 months? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're as old as my book. Yeah, it only gets better. I remember when I started when I started blocking testosterone and started estrogen, it was in 2014, so it's been 11 years now. It took me 3 weeks before my spouse at the time looked at me and said, I should have let you do this a lot sooner. The change in my feelings and attitude, everything inside of me and the way it was expressed was so completely improved that she started running around and telling all the other spouses of male to female trans spouses, get your spouse on hormones. Don't wait. It's powerful stuff. And
Yeah.
for us to get the right one in our lives is critical.
So do the hormones applied at your age do the same, like have the same impact and effect as applied at your age?
I would say,
Or-
from my perspective, since I didn't get to do it at his age, but from my perspective, the primary thing was the way it made me feel in my head and my heart about myself, the affirmation, but also the noise. I've compared gender dysphoria to standing next to an aircraft engine, roaring at times, and maybe sometimes idling and not being too disruptive, but at times being so deafening that you can't think about anything else besides the dysphoria.
Yeah.
In a short period of time, they shut the engine off and the plane was gone, and I could start to see and feel everything about the world around me. It was like I was no longer living in deafening black and white, but suddenly the world was colorful. For me, there weren't a whole lot of great physical improvements. The best part of it was the emotional, mental improvements. Now, from the younger
Do you
perspective,
want me to share yours first, or do you want me to get the nurse side first?
I mean,
Go ahead.
okay. So, I mean, like, it really has been, like, life-changing because, like, yeah, it very much is, like, an engine, like, just blaring at you at times. It's like, you just want to be accepted. You want to be accepted by others, and you want yourself to accept yourself. And I felt like, yeah, that really helped me. And yeah, it just made me feel more accepted, not only to others, but to myself, because, I wasn't staring at a girl in the mirror. I was standing at myself, a guy who, like, what I feel inside. And yeah, it's very helpful.
I think it's also important to note that that's why I feel like gender affirming care, it just has to be available, because we knew young and we were able to intervene while he was young, that he never had to go through female puberty. He did have some breast tissue form, but we were able to pretty much stop that. So the only thing his body has ever known is male puberty. So no curvy hips, like all of the things that, like, when a person transitions later in life, there are just some things that unless you get plastic surgery or severely try to alter things, like with feminization surgeries or whatever, that you won't have to go through, because he didn't ever have any of that estrogen in his system long enough to be able to cause all of those changes. And so that's where, again, it's like, if you know, why would you make your kid go through that? Why would you make, I don't know, I just think about now that I see him as him and we see younger pictures of him as a girl, it makes me feel so bad how I didn't see the sadness and just the awkwardness. Like, we look back at some of those and we're like, oh my gosh, like, you're so uncomfortable in makeup and girly things. And when I don't know, it's just like all of the things that he just, it wasn't him.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Well, we know in growing, and maybe this is a problem, I don't know, but when you're growing up, life is just awkward as you're going through all these changes. And so it's just normal. You're awkward. You feel like this. Yeah, it's just normal. You grow out of it or whatever. We're all awkward in our bodies at some point, right?
Right.
It's triply awful though when you go in the wrong direction. I remember feeling like my body is betraying me.
Yeah.
I was going to grow up to be the young woman I knew myself to be, and every step of the way it was like, nope, this is what you are. You know, it's ugly and honest. I can't say this more strongly. If you know that's where your child is and you force them to go through the wrong puberty for them, that is child abuse.
And do you think that comes from, those believers in God and God, nature, and God doesn't make mistakes, and why would he do that? And how do you square that mentality, or maybe
So how I look at it, and especially at the cross section with church, because I lived being Mormon for a very long time. So I definitely had those preconceived notion about the family proclamation and that gender is eternal and everything. And the way I look at it now is, I don't know how to articulate it because I don't want it to come off that I think that it's, okay, let me try this again. So for example, if somebody is born with an extra chromosome and it causes them to have Down syndrome, that's just a fallibility of their body, right? Do we think that a Down syndrome person in the church is going to heaven as a Down syndrome person? People believe no. They're like, oh, they'll be, quote, normal in the next life, blah, 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 And so the way I look at it is very much where biology is so complex. It's when you look at the SRY genes and all of the cascades that happen during development, that if we hold space for people to be born left-handed or to be born with one extra chromosome or one less chromosome or a pancreas that doesn't function or
conjoined
genes,
twins.
Yes.
All these freaks of nature, for lack of a better term.
Yes. And so I do agree that I'm like,
there must be a better term.
There has to be. That's what came to me, and so.
But it's like,
please correct me though. That's fine.
I think if we hold space that bodies can be born differently, how do we not hold space that for whatever reason, there's a cascade that is different, hormones, whatever it is, which I also want to hold space that I don't think we need a scientific reason to say, oh, look, now it's okay for transgender people to be transgender. Like, it is their experience, and for whatever reason that their body does not reflect who they are. How do we not make space for that?
Fear.
Yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, I'm like, why does anybody care? Like, why does anybody
Just
care
leave
that Laurie
people
Lee
alone.
transitioned? Is it impacting their life? Is it harming them? Is it doing anything other than helping a person show up happy and authentic in themselves? It's not impacting them.
We need to stop giving a shit sometimes.
Especially giving a shit about other people when it's not our business.
Just let people be.
Same thing with church. We have a lot of family members who are still active, and I have to give them credit that from how we were raised and how we were taught, they have been amazing in support of him. But at the end of the day, I'm like, why do you care if you think that we're making the wrong decision or that we're going to go to hell or God doesn't make mistakes? At the end of the day, if God is this powerful being that's going to figure it all out,
it's on him.
It is not your lane to worry about my salvation, my kid's salvation, or whatever it is. Your job is to emulate Christ and to love one another. The end.
The end. No, seriously, it could stop there. The gospel could stop there.
Exactly.
And we would solve so many bloody problems.
Bloody problems.
As the British wife would say.
I agree, Mom, that mortal bodies can be any spectrum of variations and challenges.
Yes.
I've always squared the idea that gender is an essential characteristic of our eternal identity with a big amen. And I was who I am now, who you see me now to be.
Yes.
I always was.
Yes, I 100%
and will
agree with
always
that.
be.
Yep.
And so happily for the church, someday down the road in a future generation, a leader's going to be able to stand up and say, look, back in 1995, this is what we said, and we were inspired,
Yes.
because that's what we're going to teach from now on, is that gender identity is eternal, and whoever you identify as is who you are. Particularly like in my case, you say God doesn't make mistakes. I've already talked this through with God.
Yes.
We've had a great conversation. I wrote about it in the book, and I'm on the right track with where Creator knows who I am.
Yes, 100%.
And who I need to be,
Mm-hmm.
and who He needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I don't know, like, it's great to have diversity and, like, to have others that are different from you. And I feel like God just creates everybody how they're supposed to be. If you're trans, you're not. You're gay, you're not. You're human, and
You're grumpy.
you're grumpy.
You're happy.
In some ways, I think some of this variety, some of this diversity happens through natural means. I don't believe in a God who literally is in total control of every little detail, but gives us the opportunity to work with whatever those details turn out to be, to do the best that we can, and to at the end of the day, love.
Yes.
Yeah.
And accept and include.
Yes.
And be what we define as Christ-like.
Yes. I can't remember the movie that this is from, but it was Morgan Freeman, and he has this quote where he's giving advice to somebody, and he says, when you ask God,
It's from Evan Almighty.
Evan, that's what it is. Yes.
When you ask him to solve a problem for you, do you think he takes it away for you, or does he give you opportunities to practice?
Yes.
Like if you ask for patience.
Yes.
He doesn't
Does he
take it
give you
away.
patience, or
No.
does he give you the opportunities to which you
Correct.
grow and practice patience? And I feel this is my own spiritual belief, but I feel like when we come here for this earthly opportunity, I believe that our souls contract into what this earthly experience is going to be. And I think that it is also, according to Mormon belief, what are we here for? We're here to have a human experience, and we're here to experience mortality and to have that little blip in eternity to see what it's like to get a body, yada, 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 which I agree partially with. I also think that with diversity, how do we not know that this isn't all part of God's plan? Like when people are born with disabilities, or blind, or deaf, or transgender, or gay, whatever it is, how do we not know that this isn't the ultimate test? That it's not necessarily showing up to church on Sunday. It's not necessarily paying tithing to a corporation. What if the whole point is when we are standing before God, and he or she or they, whatever, and they say, how did you treat your transgender neighbor? How did you treat the unsheltered person that you walked by when you know what I mean? It's like all of those principles. How do we not know that people aren't put in our path for experiencing love? When we say, God, we want to feel unconditional love. How do you feel unconditional love? You don't automatically just feel unconditional love. You actually have to have those opportunities that present you with uncomfortable situations to be able to develop that. And it's the same, that it's at the end of the day, when I'm standing in front of my Maker, I have no regrets with how we've proceeded with this journey. That it's like, you gave me a child. Fortunately, I was able to know early on, and that he knew early on. I did my best to do right by him, to use the knowledge and the wisdom and the expertise, and to help him live a full and happy and healthy life. And if you send me to hell for that, guess what? come to hell with me then,
All
I
your
guess.
friends will be there.
Yeah.
I have this theory that and again, being gay is not new, being transgender is not new,
Right.
but it seems like it's a new thing in terms of like media. And I had this theory about it. If, this was before I knew what I know now, but if that is the case and it's new, it's just allowing us to love people in different ways that we,
Right.
because it's easy to love and serve those people who look and act and talk and dress and think and believe like you.
Exactly.
But when someone's different, it's not so easy now, is it?
Yeah.
So
100%.
that's and again, I know it's not new. Just, I don't believe that way anymore.
Good.
So
That's growth. 'Cause it's not
so
new.
white guy can change.
And that's, I think, the beautiful message of being able to share stories and to learn from people around you.
So the question that I've had in my mind is, with all of the discussion around safety in bathrooms and so forth, what's it been like trying to use private spaces that are designed for guys?
Yeah. I mean, like, when I was first transitioning and stuff, and I was using like the women's restroom, I had a different haircut. I had a different name, but I wanted to use the male bathroom. And originally they were like, like just at school, they're like, we don't know if we really want to do that. How about we give you a different bathroom on the top floor with a one key that's the bathroom you can use. And that's the bathroom I did use, but it was so uncomfortable. I would often miss class because I had to use a different bathroom, and it was because other people were uncomfortable. It's not like, here, let's help you. And it's the same thing, like, getting off topic a bit here, but like with bullying, if I was feeling uncomfortable and somebody was feeling uncomfortable because I was being myself, I was moved. Instead of like them being like, here, let's assess you because you are the one that's ultimately like, yeah, they would just be like, here, since everybody is like bothered by you, let's just move you instead.
You're treated like the problem.
Yeah.
Because from a logistics standpoint, it's easier to address one person versus a group, I guess. And maybe that's where their thinking is. I don't know.
And it was just
Doesn't
like,
make it right. But
yeah, and it was just like, since this is the problem, we're just going to move you instead. And it just like, I'm just like, I just want to use the bathrooms. Like,
man.
I just want to, everybody has to do it. So like, I don't know. It got to the point where I wasn't using the restroom at school because I felt uncomfortable, because it's like, trek all the way up to the second floor with this teacher bathroom, or use the women's restroom where I didn't feel comfortable either. So yeah, it just wasn't healthy. And then, yeah, I just hated using the bathroom. But when we changed my name and gender marker and started like that whole journey with the new school and everything, I like started using the men's bathroom in public and at school. And like, I don't know, at one point I'm like, yay, I get to use the men's bathroom. But at the other point, it's just like, get in and out as fast as possible because, I can't use a urinal. I use a stall, and like, I don't know. It's
to be
just
fair,
hard.
I sit down when I pee because I can't stand the sound of peeing. I hate it. I sit down. I'll use a urinal, but if there's a toilet, I'll use the toilet and I'll sit because I don't like the sound of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
not
it
weird.
just sounds different. So like, I don't know, get in and out as fast as possible.
Yeah, you shouldn't be rushed.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just like, I just need to use the bathroom.
Exactly. If it's any consolation, like places where I worked at the church office building for 20 years, I didn't use the urinals hardly ever anyway. I was sneaking into the stall just because, and we only had like 2 stalls on our floor. It was sometimes challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we all kind of go through something like that. In your current school and circumstances, have you ever been like called out or mistreated for being in the men's space?
No, because I'm like you said in stealth, so like nobody knows. Like a few people at the beginning of the year were like, 'cause like, at the beginning of the school year, I didn't have testosterone and my voice was like super high. And like, yeah, so people were like, are you? But then like they all got shut down. But no.
Just say,
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, let's do this. Well, I know your story. I can't tell. And I know your story.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
it's working.
yeah, it's working.
Yeah.
Get a little scrubby going here, and then
Yeah, and I'm just like, it feels like amazing because I'm not known as the trans guy. Like, yes, I'm like proud of who I am, and yeah, I'm like, yeah, I like talking with other trans people and like hearing their stories and being like, yeah, that's like similar to mine. But at the end of the day, I just want to be a guy.
yeah,
Like,
and you totally deserve that.
yeah, I just
Not
want to
too
be
much to
known as
ask.
a guy. Yeah. So like, I don't know. It's just like, even like with people being supportive and stuff, it's like whether I'm a guy or a trans guy, I feel like it's a bit different, like different things versus I don't know. It's just different experiences, but I just like
You're just you. Just
Yeah.
get to know me for me, regardless of all the other.
yeah.
And that's hard for, especially if people know you before.
Mhm.
That's a harder transition for
Yeah.
them just because they're like, oh, but they're trying to wrap their brain around what do I
Yeah.
call you, or what the pronoun, or do you like people have to get
Exactly.
used to that.
Yeah.
So we got to give grace to each other on both sides, I guess.
Yep.
I go through in plenty of detail, perhaps more vulnerably than I should have, just how much discomfort I experienced in men's private spaces, like restrooms, like showers
Oh.
at college and at the missionary training center. I didn't grow up with brothers, and it was like really, really hard to have a male roommate or a male missionary companion, because even though I was trying hard to present as male, there was still this tender young lady going, I ain't letting y'all see me, even
Yeah.
though the parts were roughly what they ought to have been. I explain a lot of that in dictates, and quite honestly, our private spaces should be more private than they actually are.
Oh, yeah, cuz like
Oh yeah, the high school shower.
oh. Yeah.
That's just a breeding ground for abuse and bullying on 7 different levels.
Yeah, so being somewhat intersex, I was not equipped like the other guys, and I just didn't want any part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot that's true, especially like, I don't know, I feel like swimming pools and like changing rooms, there would just be like people changing out in the open. And I'm just like, I kind of just want to like sit in a stall and like
Yep.
do my thing and not just like, and it gets hard too when like the changing rooms are like all out in the open and then there's like bathroom stalls and I'm like, I don't really want to change where I like
Where
people
you-
have been
Where you
using the
pee.
restroom.
No, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want to put your over an open toilet.
Yeah.
It's like there's not enough hooks in here to hang everything up.
Oh, when the hook breaks. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no, my stuff hit the floor.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 7th period, and who knows how clean that is.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you, Laurie Lee. What has the bathroom situation been like for you? Because I feel like there's a higher acceptance of trans men than there are trans women. Like, I feel like what faces is so much less than what a trans woman does, especially when it comes to a medical transition. Like, people like expect trans people to all medically transition to then look cisgender, and we don't really create a whole lot of space. And I would just love to hear your experience, because the fear that is promoted, I would much rather be surrounded by a whole bathroom full of trans women than cisgender men.
Yeah. The and what you say about the dissonance between trans men and trans women, Nobody's worried really about an assigned female at birth transition to male showing up and hurting anybody. That nobody's come up with that narrative.
Right.
But the narrative that keeps getting repeated is that someone assigned male at birth is a predator from birth, and if they're in the female space, obviously they're there to do something really naughty, and that couldn't be.
It's just not true.
It's just not true. And there are wonderful memes about fully transitioned individuals. Do you really want this bearded guy in the ladies' room, even though he was assigned female at birth, with the big buff arms and the tattoos all over him and so forth.
Right.
No, you don't want that person in there because that's going to make everyone uncomfortable. Although there are laws in 26 places that say that's where he's supposed to use the restroom.
Right.
So bathroom bans and laws like that, I kind of have my own desire to go around and test them to see what kind of trouble one could get into. Florida enacts a bathroom ban in all of their public spaces. So I made sure when I got off the plane in Fort Lauderdale that I marched myself right over to the women's room.
I adore you so much. You are such a great
And
troublemaker.
guess what? There were women in there, and I was a woman in there. And maybe we complimented each other's travel clothes. I don't know, but no alarms went off. Nobody came and tackled me to the ground. I've done the same thing in the Salt Lake International Airport on purpose, to make sure that does anybody even notice?
Right.
Uneventful.
Totally uneventful. My parents live in Arkansas. I love marching into a women's room with my 86-year-old mother, and nobody cares about that kind of stuff, except a bunch of politicians who really want to know what's going on between your legs.
Yep.
For shame. They're the ones you ought to be afraid of.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I feel like trans people,
They're just people.
yeah, they're just people. And I mean, they're way more likely to have something happen to them than have a trans person do something to somebody else. And most of them are I don't know, cis men. So it's just why would you transition and do all of that? Just why? People just want to be themselves.
And people don't transition just to harm other people or to win at sports.
Yeah, why would you
No.
just do all those things and save yourself the money and the time?
Exactly.
No, it's the idiocracy of these perspectives, these platforms that are causing such harm by legislating things that just don't need to exist.
Right. I agree.
Let's take care of the poor and needy. Let's create more peaceful places in the country and in the world. Why are we going after this totally harmless and somewhat troubled community?
Right. Because, as they say
Power.
in Wicked,
What do they say in Wicked?
you unify people by giving them a real good villain.
Common enemy.
Yep. And unfortunately, the trans community is front and center of that right now with immigrants and other groups of people. And that's where I'm we just all have to band together and show them that fear and division is not going to work for the majority of people.
Shows like mine, where we're trying to solve problems, don't grow like these other shows that are just vitriol and fighting and bashing. Those grow like crazy. People want to see that, but this isn't sexy what we're talking about here because we're solving problems.
It's so needed.
It is.
Just having these conversations too, raises awareness and being yeah, there's people that are transgender in the world, and there always will be people that are transgender in the world, and just knowing them and accepting them, and even though you might not fully know what they've gone through, just having empathy to be yeah, that would be hard. And we're like 1% of the whole population and not a lot, but like, just
We
acceptance.
gotta fear something.
Oh,
That's it's a thing.
So one of the things that, as I've thought about it after the book was published, that I'm really interested in people being able to consider as they read through my story is the fact that pre-transition, as a stake president and a church employee and fully, embracing and involved in the LDS church, the church represented the power structure over my life 24/7. And I chose that. I wanted to be a part of that. But if you think about that power structure, I had to, in my process of coming out and getting interviewed by a whole bunch of general authorities and challenged on my spiritual belief and testimony about my gender identity, I had to confront that power structure that had complete control over my life at that time. And their solution was to, push me aside and get rid of me. But Dictates of Conscience shows how to be resilient and how to have courage when the power structures over you challenge you and try to prevent you and try to silence you and try to marginalize you. That's transferable to our political climate. That power structure trying to take away our gender affirming healthcare, that power structure trying to prevent us from living authentically, or using the restroom at the airport, all of that power structure, there's a way to be able to courageously face it with resilience, but we need to not try to do it alone. And I think that's one of the values of the book, is to teach how to do that, how to face that down with the courage that there's a brighter day ahead. And it may take some time and there may be some loss along the way, but at the end of the day, I think my book is a hopeful book. Try to show how the church could be more hopeful and more accepting, especially through my experiences in my little ward in Salt Lake City that totally embraced and accepted me as an excommunicated trans woman. But I was holding callings, I was doing service, I was having a great time as a post-Mormon Mormon claiming my seat. There's a vision in the story, that you can have love, you can have a fulfilling career, you can, maybe someday even the church will be kind and accepting, or some church will. And that this is a hopeful opportunity, something we can recognize can occur, maybe not all in my generation, but certainly in his.
Well, church-wise, I think a generation I've heard this said many times, a generation has to die off, literally, before the thinking changes.
And one of the beauties of memoirs and people telling their story is that you can't make this go away now. It's like, remember when President Hinckley used to hold up the Book of Mormon, he said, you can't pretend this doesn't exist, because here it is. Well, here's Dictates of Conscience. Here it is. It's not going away. It is a primary source that future historians of the transgender progress and movement, if you will, can look back to and say, here's someone who was doing it back then.
Yes.
And the more of these we have, we should have 10,000 different memoirs, Dictates of Consciences, and so forth. Everyone write and tell your story. Do a podcast if you can't make a book. Just get your voice out there so that there is a record and a movement, a groundswell. It's got to be from the bottom up.
Yes.
There's only 1% of us, and all the 1% of us who have moms that have voices, and anyone who, like yourself, Brian, who is willing to promote these conversations, it's essential that these conversations occur over and over and over and over again.
Yes. And I think along the lines of that hope and resilience is just remembering, I don't know, I try to imagine what it would be like to be a member of the church during civil rights and before Blacks got the priesthood. What would that have been like to say, hey, I actually think Black people should have the priesthood, and having prophets and leaders say, actually, no, God is never going to restore that, but then it gets restored. And so sometimes I think I personally get stuck in a trap thinking, it's not hopeful. This is so awful. Look at all of these barriers. I don't know how to help my kid through this, but just remembering that nothing is permanent. Something changes. Like what we think might happen 5 years down the road, like it may or may not happen. And we see overwhelming progress through the years. And so that's where my hope is. I personally don't ever see myself being Mormon again. But I do have hope for generations, in the next 40 or 50 years that can look back when I'm an older granny and say, wow, like the church really had these exclusionary policies, kind of the same way I felt when I discovered that Blacks were never treated equally. I just assumed that they were because my parents taught me everybody's equal, and so when my little brain realized that, oh wow, why couldn't they have the priesthood? What was different about them and wrong about them? And just that movement in me as a young child, because my best friend was African American and she didn't seem different to me, except that she put lots of barrettes in her hair and she got to wear better styles than, my thin blonde hair could. But it's like, I have to hold on to that faith that in 40 or 50 years, hopefully way sooner than that we're going to look back at this time and be like, how did we ever treat people like that? How did we ever think that they weren't the same as you and me?
And I mean, like, if I didn't tell anybody my journey, like, now I feel like nobody would know. Like, I like, act like a normal human being. Like, there would be no red flags. And, like, yeah, I'm just, like, it's just, like, kind of sad when, like, you are treated like, yeah, you're human, but then they find out that you're trans and they're like, oh, I should treat you differently. But I'm like, they're the same person. Like, you just know one other fact about them. They're being themselves. And like, yeah, I don't think you should treat them differently, like, what based on what is under their pants.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something as a mom that I hope people will open their heart to their own thoughts and beliefs and what they teach their kids, because that has been one of the most difficult parts about this journey, is that when people meet him and they don't know, they treat him just like a teenage boy. He hangs out with the guys, like there's just zero issue. And then if they happen to hear from neighbors or people at school or hear through the grapevine or put things together from Facebook, it immediately shifts everything. And I want people to sit back and ask themselves, why is that? What the fact that you find out that he is a transgender person, why does that change how you view him or family, the kind of person he is, if he can play with your kids or not play with your kids? Why, when you know that, does that change for you?
Ignorance and fear.
Yeah.
It's a simple answer, but that's the reality. Just don't know. People, they probably think it's well, it's the same. We have some mutual friends in this area that are less active also, and they get marginalized by those who probably think they're doing the right thing, and putting notes on their door about how to be better, and anonymous notes, and they're just treated like some sort of disease. Even if you start questioning, which is kind of a role where I'm at now, people say things to me that I've said to other people when I was fully in. Like, oh my gosh, I said that to people and now you're saying it to me and I get it. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like you're poison if you don't. This is a very groupthink club, as you well know.
Yeah.
You were in the heart of it. More than anyone. Laurie Lee. So
Maybe instead of eradicating gender-affirming healthcare for young people, we should eradicate ignorance and fear.
that would be the start. That's the
So,
root.
Let's get rid of ignorance and fear.
All right.
And
And by having this conversation, we're planting some seeds into my 7 followers worldwide.
I think it's also helpful because diversity scared me when I was younger. You know, people who were different or believed different things, it did feel threatening.
Because you were
And-
taught.
Yeah, because that's how you're taught. And honestly, when you are surrounded here in Utah by the majority that think, dress, act, eat the same things you do, that's all you know. And so when you're presented with something that challenges that worldview, it is really uncomfortable. But one thing that really helped me create space and awareness for that is I love being in nature and forests and going hammocking. And when we were at a national park in, I think it was New Mexico, they had all of these placards around saying how they had to add diversity to the forest because one thing had overtaken it, and how the forest was no longer healthy because that one thing was the majority. And so the Forest Service took intentional effort to diversify the forest because that's how a forest thrives and survives, is in diversity.
Or a church.
Yes. And so when you apply that
Learn
to,
from nature,
yeah,
people.
no, really,
Yeah.
it just is so simple, but yet we make it so complicated. And it's like, if that is how nature works, why do we not think that we are any different?
Because God created that, right? Apparently. So that works perfectly, and nature seems to work perfectly. So let's learn.
Yeah. Amen.
I had a question, Laurie Lee, about your kids, because I know in the book you said some were cool with your new world, some were not.
Yeah.
How has that changed since?
It's still the mixed bag that I describe in the book. It's interesting to me that the 2 of my kids who are active church-going Latter-day Saints do struggle with the course I've taken, and the 2 that have really walked away from Mormonism seem a whole lot more accepting and comfortable with me, and each of them in their own varying degrees. But I also look at my folks who have never been Mormon, and they were lovely and accepting of me, even though in their later years I really kind of challenged their worldview. And they lost a son, and my dad lost a namesake. But somehow there's a correlation between actively participating in the church and resisting my truth. And I don't want to say it's the gospel that in their lives that's causing them to do that, because I don't think it's that. I don't think it's what we call the gospel. I think it's what the institution calls
Culture.
Culture and obedience to the words of the current leaders.
Do you ask them? Like, do you say, these 2 are cool with it, they have their reasons, you're not, what are your reasons?
So my version of that was our middle daughter, who's a lovely, generous person, and someone who has most of her adult life worked in the temple on a weekly basis, served a mission, so forth, raising 2 little girls, in church participation. I asked her, what are you going to teach your girls as they get older and start having questions about who I am? And her response was saddening and disappointing to me. It was basically that we're going to teach them that the path you're on isn't right. It's not what God wants for you in your life. And I said back to her without hesitation, you're wrong about that, because I know exactly where God wants me to go in my life, and I'll hope you'll share that with them. I interface with her on a number of gospel topics that I know that she likes to share with me and likes to rely upon me. And we have a good relationship, but she's unwilling to see me for who I am and want to understand and accept that. And it's as though the institution of the church has kept her blinders on, and I look at that and go, well, I raised her in that, but apparently I didn't raise her to think in an open-minded way. As a parent, I go, where did I go wrong in not helping her to think more broadly? But that's not her nature. And she's safe in her church environment. It's what she knows.
We like the personal revelation and the agency as long as folks do what's normal and what we think is
what's expected.
But boy, when that, I mean, I know there's the joke, like, I don't want this free agency crap. I want Satan's plan. You just do what you're told. As a parent, I get it sometimes.
Well, ironically, do what you're told seems to be the way it's coming across the pulpit these days.
Yeah.
Oh, totally is. When the prophet has spoken, the debate is over. That used to be a thing.
The debate is over, and the first principle of the gospel these days happens to be obedience as opposed to love. I don't recognize the Mormon Church any longer, because we don't call it that either, do we? But I don't recognize the church that I once belonged to, because it doesn't provide that opportunity to include and to love. And the focus is on do it this way or get out of the way. One of the things I bring out in my memoir is the fact that I brought to senior church leaders, the issue of my gender identity before they were prepared to teach about it or talk about it. There's that great quote from January of 2015 where Elder Oaks, then a member of the Quorum of the 12, said, that issue is transgender. And although we know gays and lesbians, and we have for some time, we don't know much about transgender. We've got a lot to do on that subject. Well, 3 years before that, I was sitting talking with the brethren about my understanding of gender identity, and they couldn't comprehend what I was talking about. All they knew was what they'd received in general authority training regarding what they called same-sex attraction.
Right.
They didn't know about gender identity. Well, my fear was, and it's come to pass, that what they have decided to learn about gender identity is conflating it with biological sex at birth, and anyone who transitions is a danger to the safety and the goodness of the members of the church. And so they've put restrictions in place that really would ever prevent me from ever wanting to sit in a pew again. And I talk about that in the afterword of Dictates. Just how completely eradicating the current restrictions are. To any Latter-day Saint who has transitioned, who might want to still participate in their faith, it's just so unfortunate.
I guess the church has to have a boogeyman too.
Yes, and we're presently it. It was interesting to me. I pointed out, I think it's obvious in the book, that as soon, April of 2019, as they eased up on the policy of exclusion towards same-sex couples and their children, the very next General Conference, October of 2019, they doubled down on gender identity. And there's a lot of background stuff that was going on legally for a couple of years prior to that, and I stepped right into the deep end of the doo-doo patch with my coming out and transitioning in the year that I did, because it was really on their radar as far as the legal protections the church was trying to get for themselves at that time with regard to gender identity. not being something that they supported as a church. And so a little thing like me showing up once at a Relief Society meeting was taboo, because the church couldn't let anybody self-determine their gender identity.
And can we also point out the hypocrisy of this?
Please. Because you're going to.
I am.
I'm looking forward to it.
Like, I mean, I feel passionately about women's role in the church or lack thereof, but it's women, they don't get anything without a man presiding. General Relief Society or whatever they're calling it now, there's always the final speaker is a man, or men speak more than the women do, and they're totally fine commandeering that. But then it's like, oh, if a trans woman now wants to participate, oh no, it's for females only. And it's like, really? So when are you going to let cisgender women and trans women lead these auxiliaries and organizations without your oversight? It just blows my mind that it's like you're willing to commandeer it when it's cisgender men and the priesthood. But the minute somebody transitions, it's like, ooh, that's so bad. That's only a space for women. And it's like, oh, but you have no problem being in that space as a cisgender man. Just the hypocrisy is astounding.
No argument from me on that one.
So I also poke at the notion, because it was happening at the same time as I was transitioning and talking to the leaders of the church about my gender identity, was the formation and the activity of ordained women. And although I didn't personally participate in those things, I was seeing those things happen at church headquarters. And once I was out and folks became aware that I had served as a bishop and a stake president, and served with my might, mind, and strength in my female heart and soul, but not my genitals, it was a really interesting thing to consider that. And this may be the part of me that was most threatening to the leaders of the church, was that I did those things and did them very, very well. And my stake loved me up until the point I transitioned. We had good experiences as a ward and a stake under my leadership, but I was doing it always as me. And if I could do it, why not ordain and set apart other women to lead and preside, and to do the things that I was asked to do with their heart, might, mind, and strength in their female hearts and souls.
I think a high council should be 6 women and 6 men.
There's a good place to start.
That's the only calling I ever actually kind of wanted.
Yeah.
And like, how can 12 dudes represent all of the stake?
Wouldn't it be more comfortable for a sister to go in and sit down with her Relief Society president to discuss her temple recommend questions?
Yeah, agreed. I see the imbalance.
Yeah.
In the last 3 years, I never saw before.
I squirmed like crazy at the notion of somewhere between 4 and 16 men exercising a church disciplinary council on a woman.
It's awful.
And then I had that experience, and I was the woman surrounded by 16 men. And
having been on the other seat.
Having been in that seat, in the same room with most of the same men. But even though I knew them so well, it was just such a powerful imbalance. Usually, more often than not, women don't make it to stake disciplinary councils. But I did, because I had held the priesthood. It was such a disgusting imbalance.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a whole nother show, honestly.
Right.
About the imbalance there.
That was one question I did have for you is, do you feel like when you were in those leadership positions, do you feel like you were aware of the imbalance because of how you felt, or do you feel like it was once you transitioned that it was obvious?
No, I had long felt the imbalance of a stake council meeting, for example. And I think I mentioned it because it was the same configuration of the table that I had my disciplinary council at. My first act as a stake president was to add an additional big wooden table to the room so that it wouldn't be that typical T-shape configuration, but we had essentially a symmetrically square table jammed into the high council room in our stake so that there would be enough perimeter. Being an architect, there would be enough perimeter for all the chairs for every person who was a part of the stake council. Subtle thing that if in the old configuration with the T-shaped table, the stake presidency and the high council fit at the table, and all the other council members sat in chairs against the wall, looking at the backs of the high council. That drove me nuts from back in the 80s when I was the Stake Sunday School president and sitting next to the Stake Relief Society president, and we're looking at the backs of the High Council. We weren't invited to the table. So I built a table, the facilities manager built a table that had enough perimeter so there was a chair for every person at the table. And then I invited the women leaders in our stake. And this was 8 years before I came out. I invited the women leaders of our stake to sit right next to us as a stake presidency, and their voice was always the first one heard on every topic, to purposely disrupt what everyone was familiar with regard to how council meetings normally progress in the church. And it bore fruit because those women leaders had a lot of insight and important voices to give. And so I was doing that from the beginning.
I love that.
Did you ever want to, or think to yourself, I need to go higher to maybe make this more official? Did you ever want to do? I'm sure you probably wanted to, but you probably
Well, yeah. By that time, I wasn't in the meeting house program anymore. But if I had the opportunity, I would have forced them to order the fourth table and the extra chairs to make that work. Yeah, because it just made such a difference from all the other councils I'd ever been a part of.
It's symbolic, but
it's symbolic
in a
the way it is. It's symbolic of the part that's broken.
Yeah,
and it totally removed so much of the misogyny, and the men in the room, they caught on and they respected these women leaders in ways that I'm sure wasn't necessarily in their nature.
Yeah.
Elevating women's voices in meetings was just a big part of everything we did as our stake.
Knowing your story now, it makes perfect sense too. You know,
I mean, we had the token brother speak at stake conference. Young women and women spoke at my stake conference a lot more than men. I mean, other than the fact that I had to get up and give a talk, but you have a Saturday evening of a stake conference with 5 women speaking and me, because they just happened to be the presiding officer at the time with my woman's heart.
Any final thoughts? I know we could probably go on for another hour. Final thoughts from all three of you. Mom, you could start since the microphone's in front of you and you're smiling big.
I would just say it doesn't hurt to love other people and to practice compassion and empathy. And so when you are faced with people who look different, act different, believe different, it doesn't take that much to just show compassion and to have empathy and to just love on the people around you.
Amen.
Dang, that was really good.
Yeah, top that.
Oh, gonna be hard to top that one.
Barley's like, I will.
Yeah, you have the final
just
word.
like, I don't know, gaining awareness on other people that are different and like accepting them for who they are and loving them and like, I don't know, like maybe going out of your comfort zone for a little bit, but like, I don't know, just like making them feel seen and important and heard and like their voice matters in this world.
And listen to the other person, listen to their stories. To emphasize again, gender identity, which is how an individual sees and feels themselves, is real. 99% of the population doesn't have to wake up in the morning and wonder how they should be presenting because it kind of fits who they are. 1% of us at some point in our lives have had to wake up in the morning and say, how am I going to hide this today? How am I going to present myself today? Or can I be safe if I go out? Because I have this gender identity that is immutable and is constantly with me and sometimes causes me incredible harm or pain, but it's real. And any doctrine or policy or political agenda that conflates that gender identity with biological sex at birth is mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually will fail. Gender identity is real, and the only way you can know a person's gender identity is to ask them, listen carefully, and believe them. And then, like has been said, act accordingly with love, with kindness, with acceptance, with compassion.
Second commandment.
Lord,
Doesn't get
100%.
it shouldn't be any more complicated than that, but we do a good job of it, complicating it. Thank you all so much for coming. This has been really fun.
Thank you for having us.
I hope you're welcome. You're welcome. I hope that anyone listening picks up some nuggets that they can change their world with. Sometimes we think we all want to change the world, but we think it has to be on some grand scale, but we don't. It's just we have to change our little world and our low influence and our little circle.
Yeah, one person at a time.
Like we're doing here. It was the four
Share
of
the
us,
podcast.
the four of us yapping in this room. Not yapping. We're discussing big, important things. So thank you all.
Thank you
Thanks,
again
Brian.
for listening to The Parish the Thought Show. We know you have many podcast options and appreciate that you have chosen us. If you love what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. If you hate what you hear, only tell us. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from The Parish the Thought Show.